Hello all. I'm here. It is noon, high noon, and I'm excited to get started with you all. I'm going to wait a few, and I'm going to try to move this so it doesn't bump my microphone. I'm going to wait a few and see who comes on, and we'll get started. We're going to be talking today about food. Food is medicine, really. Food and how it impacts your pain levels and what you can do about it. And just kind of the 101 simple version so that I don't overwhelm. But I want to give you guys a quick, kind of the quick and dirty on some ideas that maybe you hadn't considered before. I've got some people on here. If you're just coming on, give me a thumbs up or heart. And if you want to, write in the comment box where you're from, who you are, where you're from. It'd be awesome so I can see. It's really fun because we get people from all over the place and all over the world, really, which has been incredible. So, and if you want to share this video out, I don't know if it'll share out of the private group, but you can try. You can share it with your tribe or your Facebook group, and more people can learn more stuff. But I'm really excited. This is a huge topic, and obviously we can't cover it all in a short amount of time, but I have a big announcement at the end, so stick around, and I will let you know how you can actually learn more on the topic. All right, I'm getting some thumbs up. Hey, Chris. Chris, I'm so glad to see you here. This is a good one for you. Kim from Wisconsin. Hello, Kim. How are you? That's awesome. Yeah, she couldn't come live the other day, I think, because it was too late or something. Was that you, Kim? I think. I can't remember. But I'm sitting in this is actually my boyfriend's house, and his awesome jukebox that doesn't work. It doesn't work. I saw it when I first came in, when I met him, and I was like, oh my God, you have a jukebox. My dreams have come true. And then it doesn't work. If you know anyone that fixes jukeboxes and it's a good price, I may fly them out here to do it because that is a beauty right behind me there. Hey, Cheryl, how are you? Oh, it's so good to hear from you, Cheryl. Cheryl's an old friend. Cheryl trained my crazy border collie who passed away last year. She was still crazy. I'll never have a border collie again. Who here has had a border collie? Give me a thumbs up. They're crazy town. Those dogs are like nothing else. So I'm gonna basically just go through some concepts, some highlights from my book. It's chapter 4, and hopefully you all have downloaded it by now. If you haven't, kindly email Hannah and ask her. She's my assistant, my trusty assistant, and say, and it's the email address is assistant@drtyna.com. It's actually posted on this page too. If you want to look through, I posted it yesterday. Just kindly ask her for the PDF. I just want you to actually sign in and grab it and try. For some people it's not working, but if you can get on that list, then I can actually I'm sending out information to that list that's specific to this, and I want to make sure that you get that too. So, and then also check your spam folder. You have to confirm your email with my email carrier. So you have to go find, maybe search through your email, assistant@drtyna.com, and see what comes up, because if you can confirm your email, then you're on the list. And if you're on the list, you get the good stuff. So, but you guys get the good stuff in here too. But I want to make sure everybody gets in both places as much as I can. So I am going to get started, actually. I think we've got a few people on, and I don't want to keep all your day. I know it's lunchtime. So, well, at least on the Pacific Coast, it's lunchtime. So the biggest concept from the book that I was trying to, here's my chihuahua. I don't know if you can see, she's chewing on herself. Oops. You see her? She's black. She blends in with everything. Anyway, the big idea here is that you choose what you eat, and this is a hard concept for some people. You know, I think about my grandmother who was in the Great Recession, and you know, she lived through that, and they were just stoked to, I'm trying to get my microphone out of the way. They were just stoked to have food, honestly. They were just happy that there was food. And for some reason, flash forward all these years, all these decades, and we've got this big emotional thing around food, and I honestly don't get it. I do realize that some people have a food addiction issue. I totally understand the biochemistry of it, and that we're talking about dopamine pathways and all the rest. If you have a lot of candida and bacterial overgrowth in your gut will literally signal to you to eat more sugar and eat more refined carbohydrates, because those organisms like to eat refined carbohydrates. So the more you eat refined carbohydrates, and I'll talk about this today, the more you're feeding that pathway, you're just feeding the bad guys because they're asking you to. So I get that there's a lot of factors involved here. I get that hormones play a role. I've had my hormones shifting on me more recently in my, close to my mid 40s. I get it. The thing is we still choose at the end of the day what we put in our mouth. Nobody's holding us down and force feeding donuts down our throat. So the sooner we can admit that, the better off we'll all be. Food does not need to be an emotional crux. It's turned into an emotional crux. And I'll tell you very quickly, the food industry has completely hijacked the food system. The food supply, if you're eating processed foods, you're eating chemicals, and they're putting tiny amounts of chemicals in that are so minuscule that they don't even have to list them on the label. And those chemicals are designed to hijack your dopamine pathway so that you want more, you want more, you want more. That's the same pathway that we get when we do drugs. It's the same pathway we hit when we are looking at social media and we're like, oh, look at all the likes I got, you know? So just know that if you're eating processed foods, step number one is to stop eating them. The only way to stop having your neurotransmitters hijacked is to stop giving it the drug that's hijacking it. And so that's rule one. Eat foods that look like where they came from. Foods that are whole foods that look like proteins, vegetables, fruits, some fruits. Gotta go easy on the fruits. I explain in my book why. And then healthy fats. And that's basically it. If it doesn't look like where it came from, don't put it in your mouth. And that's just you don't need a fancy book to tell you this. You don't need to read some scientific novel. You don't need to look at a bunch of studies. You don't need somebody to give you a food list. You don't need someone to give you recipes. If you don't know how to cook, then there are tons of great books out there and tons of great websites. My classes are crooked for that matter, giving great recipes on whole foods. But the bottom line is you got to eat whole foods. So just know that no one's force feeding you. Food is fuel. Straight up, it's fuel. I realize there's an emotional component and a social component, but at the end of the day, it's fuel. So you're either putting something in your mouth that's poisoning you, or you're putting something in your mouth that's nourishing your cells. And that's it. So like I walk into Starbucks and I look at that baked goods section, you know, all the bakery goods they tempt you with. I don't even for a second, it doesn't even hit me, because in my head, I'm like, oh, it's poison. Because sugar is poison, straight up. So I'm like, oh, it's poison. It's a whole case full of poison. No wonder our country is so messed up and everybody's health is so jacked. So don't eat anything out of the Starbucks pastry case. just get yourself to understand this, and you have control. You have control over your life. And so that's why chapter 1 was mindset, because you ultimately have control over your life. So know that it's fuel. Food is fuel. Food is information. Your body, you're telling your cells and your body and your molecules and your microbiome information. You're giving it information. Think about a dog that scurries around and sniffs everything and then eats it, or eats whatever they decide to eat in the yard. I've had a lot of dogs and I watch them in the backyard, and like, food is information. The foods you eat as you travel, if we were considering nomadic people, which we used to be, the foods that we ate from place to place gave us information about that place. If something is bitter, it might be poisonous. If something is sweet, it's probably calorie dense. And, you know, if you're nomadic, that's a good source of quick calories. But, come on, honey is not paleo. I'm not promoting a paleo diet, but it's like, when would you take down a beehive? So if you're going to eat honey, understand it is straight up sugar and you want to eat small quantities. So just consider your food as information for your body and for the environment you're in, and you'll start to make better food choices, I promise. The whole goal at the end of the day is just to turn on your instincts. If I can get your instincts to queue up, you will make better food choices. You have to get your instincts to turn on, though, by removing the foods that are hijacking your brain, the processed foods. A good tip is just to shop the periphery. I never even go in the middle of the grocery store. The only time I go in there is to get toilet paper or like cleaning products or whatever. Like, stay on the edge of the store. It's a good rule. There's nothing within there that's anything non-perishable is probably not the best food choice. So if it's in a package and it's got, more than 5 ingredients, it's probably not something you should put in your mouth. It's probably not even good enough to feed to your dog. So dog food's a whole other story. Food is medicine, and food is a treat on occasion, but that's where we start to get skewed. So understand that you are what you eat. Your cells literally are made up of the foods that you eat, and then you are what you eat. So we want to make sure that we level up and eat high quality, especially when it comes to our protein choices. If you're eating animal proteins, which I am a proponent of, I understand that there are vegans and vegetarians in this group, and I'm not going to get in that dispute because I have my opinions, and I also have some colleagues that are staunch vegans who are very healthy, and I always punt to them for that knowledge because they know what they're talking about. But I don't know how to be healthy as a vegan or a vegetarian. I have seen it not be very feasible for a lot of my patients, but I do know that it is possible for many. And I respect it. So, and I get it. I hate eating animals. I love animals. I like animals more than I like people. So I get it. I get that it's also a moral dilemma, but we're talking animal protein sources here for health, in my opinion, are somewhat necessary, especially if you're dealing with pain, because you need to eat collagen to make collagen. You need to eat animal protein to actually have your joints create collagen. And the whole point of tissue regeneration is collagen production. Our bodies are a big bag of collagen, basically. So if you are eating commercially raised animals or commercially raised dairy, you're getting a ton of antibiotics and chemicals and things you don't want. You're getting growth hormone additives potentially. You're getting all kinds of stuff that you don't necessarily want. And so if you're going to eat higher up on the food chain, make sure that those sources are as cleanly sourced as possible, or as organic or grass-fed or free range, or as much as you can afford, and as careful as you can be. That does count. That's important. The higher you get up the food chain, the more exposure you have to pesticides and everything else, right? Because what you eat eats. You are what you eat eats. And then taking that one step further, we have the microbiome, which is this huge, massive, it's billions of cells of bacteria that live inside all over us. We have a biome on our skin. We have a biome. That's when you get acne, is when your biome is disrupted. We have a biome in our breast tissue. When that gets disrupted, breast cancer ensues. It's very interesting. We have a biome, a very dense biome in our gut, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So the microbiome of the gut is bazillions of cells, and they all cross-communicate with one another. It's like the Borg in Star Trek. If any of you Trekkies out there, you know who you are. It's the Borg. And resistance is futile, really. Like, the bugs are in charge. How your biome is, what your biome is made of, completely dictates your overall health. It dictates whether you end up with cancer. It dictates whether you have sleep problems. It dictates whether you have mental, emotional problems. The biome is in charge. And we've known this for forever. Hey, Lynn, naturopaths have known this forever. We always treat the gut first, but they're just in the last few years coming out with really compelling evidence about the microbiome. And it's so exciting to see everybody, the science is coming out, and the doctors are listening, and the medical community at large is actually really respecting this. And so what happens when you take antibiotics? It wipes out your biome. What happens when you go get a colonoscopy? You drink that fluid to clear you out, you wipe out your biome. That's why some people get really sick after. I'm not saying don't get a colonoscopy. I'm just saying, like, understand what's happening. So we need that biome. And it's literally like a garden. If you had a garden full of weeds, you pulled all the weeds out, but you didn't put any ground cover down, what would happen? A bunch of weeds would grow back. Probably a different strain, honestly. The ones that had been repressed by the stronger ones. So let's say the dandelions. I love dandelions. In fact, if you pull your dandelions early in the spring, you are keeping the bees away. The longer you have dandelions, the more likely you are to have bees. In fact, I let all my dandelions grow one year, and I didn't mow my lawn for months. It's like, it's this tall. And I ended up with a whole giant hive of bumblebees in the ground under a shed. It was amazing. And then they went away. Once I mowed the lawn, they went away. So anyway, dandelions are the weeds. You pull all the dandelions, and what happens? A different kind of weed comes up. You pull all those, you don't do anything, you just leave the dirt, another set of weeds comes up. So what's happening is survival of the fittest there. You're getting a repression of one species because another one's more dominant and strong. So not all of the bugs in your gut are bad. In fact, many are beneficial, but some are pathologic. And if you're eating a diet full of refined carbohydrates and junk all the time, you're feeding the bad guys, and they will win. They will have a more predominance. And the bad guys tend to like to do this thing called a biofilm, where they glom up into like some super Borg, where several different species of bacteria are cross-communicating, and they create a slimy film layer called a biofilm on the insides of your intestines, hindering absorption of nutrients and also keeping themselves safe. They're like tucked away in this super, maybe 5 or 6 different bugs have created a biofilm. It's like a super biofilm. They're communicating within this biofilm, this is like crazy sci-fi, but it's true. And now you've got a pathological biofilm. So the medications you take don't work because they can't get through the biofilm. The foods you eat aren't getting absorbed because they can't get through the biofilm. So, hey, Sherry from Kentucky, right on. My boyfriend's from Tennessee, so I've never been to Kentucky. I've been to Tennessee once. Twice? Yeah, once. So anyway, that's the biofilm. And so the biome, we want a healthy biome, and the biome literally shifts within seconds based on what you feed it, which is crazy. So you eat a diet with, you eat a fiber dense, leafy green dense, protein rich, healthy fat rich meal, your biome's going to shift in a favorable way. You eat a bunch of donuts, your biome's going to shift in an unfavorable way. Things like fatty liver, things like metabolic syndrome, which we talked about, all of those things are actually directly resultant from an unhealthy microbiome as part of the clinical picture. It's not the only thing, but it's a huge part of the clinical picture. So your biome, so you're not only are you are what you eat, you are what you eats, meaning the animals and the sources of food you choose to eat, but and vegetables too, if they're mineral deficient, which most are, you're not getting minerals. But you are really what your biome converts. So what your biome does is it takes the foods you eat, it processes them. This is where food is information. It processes them and it turns them into nutrients that your body needs, or it turns them into something else. So your biome is actually doing you a lot of favors and doing you a lot of good if you have a healthy biome. So you really want a series of good guys in there. If you're getting a lot of bloating and distension after you eat and you're burping and farting, that's your biome. That's your biome turning everything into methane or hydrogen gas. And so now you're getting bloated and farting and gassing. That's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The bottom line is all of these things add up to whether you have inflammation in your gut or not. And if you have inflammation in your gut, which most people do, you end up with inflamed intestines. The cells that are tight, they're called gap junctions. They're tightly knit cellular mosaics. And when the gut gets inflamed or boggy or irritated, those tight gap junctions open. And now the foods you're eating are supposed to stay in the gut and get processed that way, are ending up leaking out into your bloodstream. And when proteins leak out in the bloodstream, the body goes, wait a minute, this is foreign, let's mount an attack. And you end up with a vicious attack on the foods that you're eating that are leaking out of your gut. This is called intestinal permeability. Again, something the naturopaths were talking about decades ago, and we were called quacks and laughed at, and now they legitimize it as intestinal permeability. It's a real thing. And we now know this is how autoimmune disease starts. It starts with a leaky gut. And that leaky gut starts by gads of bad food choices. So I have 4 diagnosed autoimmune conditions. I gave them all to myself. I ate really, 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 really shittily. I did. I ate terribly from like 7th grade until probably my late 20s. I ate terribly. And that is a direct result, I suffer from autoimmune conditions. Here's the other interesting thing about the microbiome. Not only does that leaky gut syndrome lead to autoimmune disease in many cases, but the biome dictates whether genes get turned on or off. So if you have a pathological biome, it can actually lead to autoimmune disease turning on. Genetically, that's what autoimmune disease is. It's a triad. It's your environment, it's your genetic makeup, and then there's a trigger. And that trigger could be a big shift in your biome. So you could get an autoimmune disease flare after antibiotics. You could get it after eating poorly forever. You could get it after developing IBS. So just know that the biome actually directly, by the foods that it's being fed, directly turns genes on or off. And your genes are not your death sentence. Your genes are, there's an old adage in functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, that, your genetic code loads the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So the way that you're choosing to eat, back to the very first sentence of my chapter 4 really, is the way you choose to eat directly impacts how your genetic code expresses itself. And so if you're one of those people who believe that your high blood pressure or your diabetes or all of these things are because it's genetic, don't fool yourself. It's because the food you're eating. It's because how you're living your life and the food you're eating. I know this because I come from a long line of people with high blood pressure and diabetes, and I am not going to get those things. I damned if I'm going to, so knock on wood. But I know they're coming because they could be because genetically I'm predisposed, but that doesn't mean that my genes have to turn on and that's my fate, right? Your genetic lineage is not your fate. There are some congenital conditions like cystic fibrosis and such that we can't control, but for the most part, most of these are lifestyle diseases. And boo-hoo, we all have, so many of us have a crappy genetic code at this point. That doesn't mean that we have to, that's not our fate. So do know that sugar is Satan. Sugar is flat out bad news. I'll just really quickly, like, not only does it completely jack up your blood sugar levels, and when that happens, think about this. You go sugar free for 21 days. If any of you have never done that, I encourage you to. No alcohol, no sugar for 21 days. You'll be amazed at how much better you feel. Your pain will go down, your sleep will improve, you'll lose weight, your mental emotional state will improve. But sugar straight up drives pain. It straight up drives inflammation. And the worst part is most drugs light up a certain part of your brain or trigger a certain neurotransmitter to fire. So like people who do meth actually are going for catecholamines, and people who eat dark chocolate and drink red wine are going for dopamine, and people who like whiskey are going for serotonin and dopamine, and people who have carbohydrate addiction are probably going for serotonin. Sugar lights up all of them. So, I mean, it is the most dangerous drug I could possibly think of, and yet it is completely legal, and all we do is push it. We are all pushers. We're all pushing it on our kids. We're all giving each other sugary treats as a treat. It's crazy to me. Like, it's crazy that every single time I walk in the grocery store, there's another like giant area full of sugar for the next holiday that is 3 months away. It's like, here's sugar for this, here's sugar for this, here's sugar for this. Oh, here's some more sugar for this. And I can see it on ultrasound when people are sugar addicts. I can see it in their bones. There's a very particular way their bones look under ultrasound that I figured out myself after treating thousands of patients. And I'll look at their knees and I'll be like, or their thumbs, and I'll be like, do you have a problem with sugar? And they'll be like, how did you know? Because I can see it. I can literally see it under ultrasound, which is crazy. It starts to tweak your bones out, and they start to get these weird, creepy, evil swirls and bone spurs. So if you have bone spurs, you might want to consider your sugar intake. Just as a side. I don't know the direct relationship why. I just know that I've seen it for the last decade. So know that bad fats are super bad for you. So corn syrup's a sugar. Corn oil, canola oil. Canola oil is just, canola is an acronym for like Canadian da-da-da-da-da. It's actually rapeseed oil. It's so bad for you. Bad fats are super pro-inflammatory, and pro-inflammatory fats are going to make you hurt, and they're going to cause all kinds of oxidation on your cells and do all kinds of bad things to you. And they actually lead to more obesity. They lead to brain changes that are unhealthy because your brain's made out of fat. So you really want to be cognizant of the fats you eat. And if you eat out a lot, you're probably getting a lot of soybean oil and a lot of canola oil and a lot of bad fats. So yet another reason to cook at home and eat at home. And my boyfriend's a big proponent of this, and I'm thankful, because the fats you eat, I don't care if you're eating the cleanest ingredients in the world, if it's cooked in a bunch of bad fats. And healthy fat is so good for you and so healthy for you. And I'm a big fan of a higher fat diet, healthy fat diet, not necessarily ketosis. I don't want to get into that here, but healthy fats are so great, and they do such great things for your brain and for your mood and for your pain and for your cells and your hormones. But if you're eating bad fats, so really take a look at the fats in your cupboard. If they oxidize at a low smoke point, you can look it up on the internet. If your fats are oxidizing at a low smoke point, like for instance, people love to cook with olive oil, but did you know that olive oil goes rancid and oxidizes at a very low smoke point? So olive oil is an oil that should only eat cold. It should only be used for salad dressings or cold or for dip. It should not be used for cooking, because the minute you heat it, you oxidize it, and oxidized fats are super bad for your cells, and they age your cells. Sugar ages you too. If you want to look young and healthy, keep your sugar intake low. The minute I start gobbling up sugar, like within a day or two, I'm like, oh, I just instantly wrinkle. So it literally caramelizes on your cell membranes. It caramelizes because of the heat of your body, and you get these advanced glycosylated end products called AGEs, and they are literally aging your cells. They caramelize your cells. Sugar does. Bad news. So I've already explained the inflammation component. So all these bad fats, bad sugars, bad carbohydrates, poor quality fats, all of those things lead to inflammation, and inflammation leads to pain. It also leads to leaky gut, and leaky gut leads to an immune response, and often that immune response presents as musculoskeletal pain. So when a patient comes in, I'll look at them, and I can usually tell pretty quickly, like, oh, your pain is actually, I realize it's in your knees, but your knees are not actually the issue. You've got some kind of systemic process going on, and it's hormonally driven. It's immunologic, meaning immune driven. It's probably coming from your gut as well. I punt them back to the naturopath, which I don't do that work anymore. I used to. And I make sure that they get the work they need done, but it all starts truly. It doesn't matter if I had a magic wand. If the person is eating poorly, I can't do anything for them. I mean, flat out. It can't do anything for them. The naturopath can't do anything for them. No amount of hormones, supplements, none of those things will do a damn thing if the person is not eating well. So read the book, my recommendations are not anything fancy. I'm not talking paleo or keto or nothing. I'm just talking about eating whole foods. And I even tell you a good quantity portion. So the palm of your hand is a protein portion. And the fist of your hand would be the carbohydrate amount. And a cup of your hand is the vegetable amount. I like to eat copious amounts of vegetables, a portion or two of protein. It's different for men and women, and it's different depending on your athleticism levels. But read the book and look at, thumb is a fat portion, but it's very, very simple. It does not need to be complicated, and it doesn't need to be restrictive, and it doesn't need to be leaving you feeling hungry or anything. It's a super easy way to eat, and it's just whole food, nutrient-dense food, high-quality food, fibrous foods, foods that are interesting to your microbiome, like leafy greens, lots of fiber. They need that kind of stuff to really rev their engines. So that's why when you eat a lot of fiber too fast, you get gas. It's because you just revved up your microbiome. So we want to, take it slow as we ease into this. But having a big salad every day is kind of like health insurance to me, right? And having adequate protein is critical. I've discussed that a bit. Having adequate fats is what keeps me sane and happy. And then all of these healthy, nutrient-dense foods gives you the minerals and nutrients and vitamins that you need. You may need more depending on you as an individual. I do, but it's a good start. It's a good place to start. So that is, oh, hi, Debbie from Vancouver Island. How is the weather up there today? I bet we've got gray skies here in Portland. So anyway, that's it for me as far as that goes. I want to make a really exciting announcement. I don't know if you saw the email. Oh, actually, it's coming out tomorrow. You'll be getting an email tomorrow. I'm actually next Tuesday, April 10th, I'm doing a free webinar, and it's on eating for pain relief. So it's basically me deep diving further into this and giving you some stats and giving you some really good, dense information. It's going to be about an hour to an hour and a half long, and it's going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It will be recorded if you can't make that time slot, but I wanted to let you know, and you'll be getting a link tomorrow, and I'll post it here as well where you can register for that. So being live on the webinar really gives you some awesome bonuses. There's some opportunity for some great bonuses in there, but if you can't make it live, it'll still be recorded. So that is it for me. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, Lynn does have a comment. That's amazing information about the sugar and bone spurs. I have a lot of degeneration and bone spurs in my cervical spine, and I'm recovering carnivore. I don't know what it is, Lynn, but I've seen it. I've been doing nothing but musculoskeletal medicine and regenerative medicine for the past decade, really. And I have seen thousands of patients, and I can look at them and be like, oh, you're a sugar addict, or you were. Think about this. Okay, this is just the quick and dirty. Sugar totally makes people look a certain way. People who drink look a certain way. People who do pills look a certain way. People who do meth look a certain way. People who eat a lot of sugar look a certain way. I can see it. People who eat a lot of vegetables, you cannot tell when people eat copious amounts of vegetables. You can tell when people are sleep deprived. So your joints very often, and you'll want to attend the webinar, because I'm going to go into this in detail. And there is actually some science behind the nutrition that you get in early life and your levels of degeneration and arthritis in later life. And I'm going to share that on the webinar. But yeah, it's a real thing. I was a carnivore too. I was a mac and cheeseitarian. I don't even know how I'm standing, to be honest. From 14 until 24, I chain smoked. I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day, and I ate nothing but Snapple and Sun Chips and macaroni and cheese. It was terrible. I was riddled with chronic infections. I was sick as a dog. They had to pull me out of school in undergrad because I had such a bad case of cytomegalovirus, which is the only time people get cytomegalovirus is when they're dying of HIV. And I had a tremendous case of it and had to be pulled out of school. So because I swear it was 100% because I was not sleeping well and I was eating complete crap all the time. So I have been there. I get it. And I suffer now orthopedically as well. I have some issues. So hi, Alec, French Frietarian. Yep. Alec is my buddy. He's a chiropractor. Where are you, Alec? In Ohio? I think Ohio, I want to say. Yeah, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as a kid as well, and bologna. I ate Velveeta cheese and bologna and Jiffy peanut butter and like bad sugary jelly and Wonder Bread, pretty much 24/7. So trust me, this information I'm bringing you is coming from the last several decades of me doing nothing but researching this, because I was struck with chronic pain in my late 20s, and I was like, why? How do I get out of this? So, Ohio. Yeah, Alex from Ohio. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, anybody? I'll stick around for another minute. Speaking of, I got to go eat lunch. I got to go eat lunch and go work out. So you'll be seeing it. I'll post the link, April 10th, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great webinar, a great free masterclass webinar, where I'm going to be laying down all the goods and let you know a much deeper dive into this. Pasha, hi Pasha. Yeah, underfed as a child. I've seen that too. I've actually seen that in patients who came from like Vietnam and other countries that are in their 50s now, where they were struck with famine during the wars, and their joints are, but interestingly, in all those cases, I'm not saying you, Pasha, but in all of those cases in particular, those patients did turn into sugar addicts later. So I don't know what that is, but they had those weird bone spurs too. So it happens. But our bones are alive, right? Our bones and our soft tissues are completely alive, and they morph and change and grow. And if your bones are alive, and we think of bones and joints as these standalone, isolated biomechanical structures, but they're not. They're a live organ system, just like your heart and your liver. Just because they're not soft, like your kidneys and liver and your lungs, we think of those things as organs, but your joints and your bones are an organ system too. And so I really believe that arthritis is like a type 3 in many cases, not all degeneration, but in a lot of arthritis, especially of the knees and the bigger joints, that's kind of like a type 3 diabetes almost. It's like a metabolic syndrome of the joint in many cases. So lots of reasons why people have pain and arthritis, and it's never as simple as we'd like it to be. But it really starts with food. And if people are not eating well, I know this because I'm pretty darn strict with my food. I don't eat like a saint, but I'm very well aware of what I'm eating. I eat very simply. And so if I flare up, and when I flare up a ton. When I wake up and in a flare, I think, what was the last 3 days? Like, what did I do the last 3 days? Alcohol is a huge, huge driver of pain for a lot of people. So, and it's also, alcoholics are sugar addicts, and sugar addicts turn into alcoholics often when they, it's kind of the same pathways, because it's that refined carbohydrate quick fix. But anyway, the foods you eat directly impact your pain. And if you eat simply and you know that you're eating whole foods, you can kind of go back and be like, I ate this, this, and this. I wonder which part of this, or maybe it was just simply too much carbohydrate. Everybody's very different. So, and we'll talk about that more in the webinar. So anyway, hey, Kim. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you. So I appreciate all of you guys chiming in, and I appreciate the support. And if you want to share this group out to your friends, just let them know they have to answer the questions before I let them in. But I love having you all here, and hopefully we're at over 200 now. I'd love to get it to 300 by the end of the week. So spread the good word. Thank you so much. Goodbye.